Are you happy with tonight's result?
Absolutely delighted. It set a new world record for Aboriginal art. Emily cracked $1 million and became the most famous Australian female artist. But Clifford, to my mind, has always been the master of the Aboriginal art movement. But I really didn't want to part with the painting until now. I also felt that it should be in another collection, so that it would at least get the notoriety that it is one of the most important paintings ever produced, so that it would be borrowed more by museums. And in the last 10 years that I've had it, they've only ever requested a loan 3 times. And it's basically an indication of this lack attitude that museums have towards borrowing private paintings that will then be able to promote the Aboriginal art movement. And I think by setting a new world record, then you get a follow-up which can benefit the Aboriginal art movement as a whole. And that was the important part. And the second most important reason for the sale now was that when I bought it, it could actually have left the country. Clifford was alive, living, and it would have been exported and never come back. Of the 5 major paintings that he has produced, 2 are in Los Angeles with Richard Shelton and will never come back to Australia. 1 is in Sydney and 1 is in Adelaide. And I felt that this painting would ultimately stay in Australia. Now, after 1999, you cannot get an export license permanently. So whether it goes from the current owner into a museum or whether it's going to take another 10 or 15 years is irrelevant. It will stay in Australia. And that's basically what I wanted to achieve.
And why now?
I'm leaving the gallery in the city. We've been there for 18 years. The lease is up. The art movement has changed. When I first started, Aboriginal art was basically ignored. We were the 3rd gallery in Melbourne. We then became the 2nd.
How significant do you think this? I mean, you talked about its prominence in its place, but if you can just give us a bit more of an idea as to why you think it's so significant.
It's without a shadow of a doubt, and I don't own it any longer. It followed the hammer. I was the ex-owner. It is the most important painting ever produced for the contemporary Aboriginal art movement, which now ranks as one of the most important contemporary art movements in the world today. That's a quote from Michael Petrovsky. I think the Clifford would compare favourably with the Night Watch. Having been a Dutchman at one time, I now look at the Night Watch in a different perspective. It's not just a pretty picture. It has depth. It represents the Dutch Golden Age, the 17th century. And Warlagalong represents for Australia the entire creation as believed and as known by the Stone Age nomads who in some cases less than 24 years ago were still without the knowledge that Australia had 20 million white people living in it. So we're looking at a background of 35,000 years of pedigree which is unmatched in the world of art. It is spectacular in its concept, it is large, it is from the right period in time, and I can't think of another painting, even though I have another 3,000 or 4,000 paintings, I can't think of a single painting in any other collection that would beat Warlagalong 1977. 76 in Sydney is smaller, less significant because it was painted by the 2 artists and doesn't cover the entire story. The only painting that will come close to it is already in another collection overseas and will never come back to Australia. So that left Warlagalong as the only other painting in private hands. And it should never have been in my collection in any way. It should have been bought by the National Gallery. 10 years ago they could have picked it up for $36,000, as I did. How inept is that? How can they allow a private dealer in a room full of commercial dealers buy a painting as important as Warlagalong? And I've proved my point. In less than 10 years, it became 62 times as valuable as when I picked it up at a public auction. It was called a bizarre twist of fate. What was bizarre is that I ended up owning it as a private citizen. And I hope that will change. I hope that one day I can take my grandsons, one in each hand, to Warlagalong and go, I hope I kept it in the country. He was rich enough to buy it, but he wasn't rich enough